What's going on, gents? This is going to be a slightly shorter video. We just wanted to hit some cold weather considerations. It is getting chilly out there, especially on the East Coast. You guys on the West Coast, you don't know what I'm talking about because, you know.
It gets cold.
All right, but anyway, most of the temperatures we're working with, at least in our training environment, are going to be between like 20 to 40 degrees. A couple years ago, or I think it was last year, it did get pretty low. I think it was down like in the 10s. But most of what you're going to be working with without UF gear, because your units love to send you to the field when it's 20 degrees, but you got no UF gear like Happy Suit or anything like that. So you kind of have to work with what you got. We're going to show you guys some considerations with the gear you should be getting issued from SIF, and some gear that you might not be, kind of like gloves. Because right now, guys coming in, they're not getting issued any type of gloves. You just have to go buy
You get
those.
the green ones.
Yeah, you get, well, best thing is some of my boots, they didn't get issued the leather ones or the green ones. So, all right, so we're going to show you guys how to wear your Gore-Tex first, and then we're going to show you guys how to layer with gloves. So we'll get into the Gore-Tex. So this is your Gore-Tex. Again, it's the issued one. It's also called the parka. We just refer to it as Gore-Tex because that's what it is. It's to protect your insulation layer. So if your insulation layer is a Polypro, a Waffle Top, or even a Brown Bear, it's there to help protect that layer from getting destroyed. I'm going to show you guys real quick some tips and tricks on how to wear it, because some guys coming in, they don't adjust it at all and they just look kind of funny. So first thing, I think unless you're in like a stationary position for a long time, you should just keep the hood tucked in. So what we'll do here is we'll roll it up, Velcro's in, cool, and you're good from there. From here, you can tuck these, you can cinch them down, tuck them in. It's basically just adjusting the tightness of your hood. Just make sure they're out of the way. And then from here, you can make this smaller by cinching it down. Helps keep it a little bit tighter. The way people wear their Gore-Tex the wrong way is by not cinching anything down. So that's mainly what we're going to focus on. Kind of the next pocket you have are these side pockets. They are waterproof to some extent. You can open these up to help ventilate yourself. Obviously, there's no like mesh in here, but I have seen it where if you open them up, it does allow a little bit of heat to escape. The like armpit pockets, or not really pockets, but the underarm zip. What this allows is a little bit more airflow. These are pretty big pockets. They allow a good amount of airflow to come out here because heat builds up where your armpit's at. They allow a good amount of air to come out of there. On the wrists, you can obviously use the Velcro to help cinch these down. Probably a downside to the issued Gore-Tex is when this gets muddy or wet, this Velcro doesn't stick very well because it's almost like a micro hook and loop. So that's just a consideration there. Same thing on the left side. Moving further down, this is like the key area to actually adjust on yourself. So within this pocket, there's like a waist adjustment or like a midsection adjustment, which you should pull relatively tight to you. Within this pocket, there's another adjustment that adjusts your waist. The reason why you want this to be tight is it helps keep that warm air that you've already been developing on your insulating layer. It helps keep that heat from your insulating layer inside this shell. If you don't do this, that air will just simply pass right through, and we don't want that. So definitely tighten this down, and you'll see the difference between how a cinched down Gore-Tex look and how an uncinched down Gore-Tex looks. All right, so here we have a completely unfitted Gore-Tex. Go and turn. Again, the whole point of the Gore-Tex is to help protect that warming layer, help keep that warm heat trapped in. So when it's loose, it's not doing its job the best that it could. All right, so the waist strap or the midsection strap, we want to do this one first. Cinch it down to where it just feels a little tight on the body. Tuck the excess back in. Find the waist strap. You'll have to cinch it down inside the pocket just because it won't come out. Tuck all the excess in there. Do the other side. Again, just do it right to where you can feel it get a little tight. And then the same thing with the waist. Cool. Then that should sit kind of tightly around your waist. It'll help trap that heat in. So the heat will get trapped here and here, just around your core where you actually want the heat to be. And again, you can tighten these down as much as you want. Again, to help keep the heat in. These pockets don't really regulate heat. The elbow ones do, so you can cinch these down or open them. So if you're conducting a movement, you can unzip these. They are a little bit hard to actually zip back up though, so you might have to have a buddy help you. All right, so just a little bit about our experiences. You want to talk about yours first?
Sure. Did the whole cold weather package in Norway. I mean, we did the whole Arctic Circle fucking whole shebang, which was a lot of good lessons learned from that. There was obvious ones that you kind of were like, oh, you know, I need to wear gloves or fucking I need to put something warm on. Like, you know, I've gone snowboarding and I was like, oh, I'll just throw like 14 layers on and it'll be good. But a lot of the Norwegian instructors were talking to us about how they run like a mesh material, like polypro that's kind of tight to the body to wick sweat. And then they have like a wind layer, maybe a warming layer kind of between, depends, but a windproof layer. And then that's what you're going to wear to do whatever you're doing as far as like patrolling, doing blah, 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 shooting and moving in the cold.
And what temps were you working with?
Way below freezing. It was cold as shit. I mean, we were right at the top of Norway. You know, you've been there. And we went in the winter, so that was super cool. But yeah, and then when we would stop like a movement, whether we were doing one of the hikes or whatever the fuck we were doing, we were instructed to put our happy top over to insulate us because we sweat. So the whole point, you're cold as shit when you go to step off. It sucked. But once you started moving, your body started keeping that friction going with everything moving together. You start to sweat though, so it keeps you warm and you're kind of have like warm, wet fucking body. But when you stop moving and you start getting that fucking cold seeping in from wherever, that's what's gonna freeze you and give you cold temp problems. But that's where you'll put the overlayer on, like the happy top or an insulating layer again, keep you warm until you step off again, and then you start.
Yeah, and today's like this cold weather considerations video is trying to be focused not on necessarily Arctic conditions, just cold conditions. Because even cold weather that's like just below freezing, that can put you out of the fight. You can definitely get hypothermia, it being like 25 degrees and you're just a little bit wet out in the field. That can be a bad day. So again, a lot of my experience with cold weather training, I just got to mentor under two really solid former Bridgeport instructors. They taught me a lot on a specific cold weather package on a deployment. So that's where a lot of my knowledge comes from. It was a really good time. And kind of what we'll talk about now are going to be gloves. So again, when you don't have your UF issue, it's a big problem. And a way to kind of combat that with somewhat of a cheaper option, I think this glove package that I have is, I think, around $100. So investing in that is really good because you definitely want to be able to use your fingers and not be a cold weather injury on the East Coast like during the wintertime. It's not a good look. But anyway, so merino wool base layer, I really like these. Merino wool truly does still stay warm even when it's wet. And what I do is I wear these gloves underneath a like Gore-Tex liner glove. So whenever I'm trying to do things like load rounds, trying to work a radio, trying to set up a feek, I'm going to use these liner gloves. And then when we're actually moving through thick brush, we're moving through like a water obstacle, I'm going to throw these Gore-Tex ones on. They just help protect the merino wool gloves because they're not as durable. But that's a good option. You can still contact frostbite is not as extreme, but when you're operating with a radio, you're holding your rifle, you're transferring heat regardless. And what you don't want to happen is over a long period of time of working with a radio with a rifle, you don't want to potentially get contact frostbite in like 20-degree temperatures.
Right. Your skin will, I mean, again, we're talking general, but I mean from Lejeune fucking right at freezing temps or West Coast freezing temps, doesn't matter, to like we were talking about with Norway. I mean, your fingers, like skin, will stick to your fucking your rifle, like metal. Like that's the whole joke with like sticking your tongue on a pole. It'll get stuck when it's freezing. It will stick. I tested it out and it got fucking stuck and ripped a layer of skin off. But yeah, you need to make sure you're staying like tuned into that, as well as with the gloves is having a backup pair.
Yep.
Quick little story. I definitely had a backup pair. They were in my fucking main pack, and I fell into the snow with my gloves on and soaked my gloves immediately, right off the start of the field op that we had in Norway. Immediately soaked my hands. Was like, okay, I'll just, whatever, I'll figure it out. We'll keep moving. I lost feeling in my hands within a minute, and it got to the point where you have that internal sense of like, oh, I'm fucked. Like I'm actually gonna be fucked. Was I couldn't feel my fingers anymore and I couldn't move them, and so immediately I had to ask a buddy to go grab them out of my pack, and he couldn't grab them, so he ended up giving me his, and then he just stuck his hands in his chest, so he was fucked. So I fucked my buddy, and I was wearing his gloves now because I'm a little baby and forgot to have an extra pair ready. So there's like the hands, the gloves are very real consideration. That's why I definitely recommend having an extra pair in those situations where there's snow or it's wet, of having a dry pair ready to go, because once you lose feeling in your hand, I couldn't move my fingers. He had to put the gloves on me. So
that's definitely a new boot goofing story.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's 100% a solid idea, and that's why I like the merino wool ones, because you can wring them out. But staying dry in a cold weather environment and maintaining the ability to operate is what separates a disciplined unit from an undisciplined unit in a cold weather environment. And people get wet from things that they don't think about, like the sweat. You'll get wet, like your sleeping system will get wet when you get the condensation going on in your tent. There are ways to get wet. They're not necessarily falling in the snow or it raining. And again, we're talking about conditions that, like when it's right above 32 degrees, the feel like is maybe 30 because of the wind. The water obstacle that you're moving through might not be frozen over. On the East Coast, you maybe will get the top layer. But yeah, that you're still going to be moving through some potential water obstacles. So having like a backup pair is almost it's vital. Yeah, you could really mess yourself up. So, and again, it sucks because most units won't issue you
a green gloves issue. Useless.
Green gloves and the leather gloves are not really.
I think they're expendable anyways. So.
Yeah, so that's the gloves portion. Again, to help protect you against contact frostbite, or just to help you maintain
the posture so you can shoot back. I don't know.
Exactly, but the merino wool base layer with the Gore-Tex outer layer is always a good idea. It's very similar to what we're going to go over with layering in terms of like the Gore-Tex, Polypro, and the waffle top. So that's what we're going to get into next. All right, so what we're trying to simulate here is I just got done with a long movement. I'm definitely going to have like the armpit portion of my Gore-Tex unzipped, because once you've been walking in for a long time, even in the Arctic Polypro, the Gore-Tex is really like all you need. You will stay warm, but the thing is, once you stop, you have to be very quick and efficient about getting to the next portion of gear. So we'll kind of transition to the main pack real quick. All right, so, and again, this is like without having a happy top or anything. You just made a long movement. You're going to be at this position for a long period of time, and you're going to be stationary, so you're not going to be producing as much heat. So, get my warming layers right here, easily accessible. The one that I'm really trying to get to right now is going to be my waffle top. Then also right now, I do pack an extra Polypro in my pack. If this one got really wet from a lot of sweat, or we did the type of water crossing, I can now switch to a dry Polypro if I want to. But mine's fine right now, so I'm just going to throw on my waffle top. This is going to be like my insulating layer. Again, ideally, if you have your happy top, you can just throw that completely over your Gore-Tex, over all your gear, because they're going to be oversized. But again, a lot of Marines right now working without their happy top. So put the Gore-Tex on. Cool. So this should be enough to keep me warm in a stationary position. Temperatures between like 20, 25 to 30 and 35 degrees. This waffle top, again, is not as warm as a happy top, but it's kind of what you got if you don't have UF. Anything below that, your unit should definitely be making a risk decision on if it's worth not bringing your happy suit out. And probably what saved me the most is just having an extra polypro, because that's your base layer. You're going to need one because eventually these things start to stink, and you could just sweat right through them. So that's just how I layer in a cold weather environment on the East Coast. So these are some modifications I make to my cold weather boots. These are the cold weather Gore-Tex steel-toed rat boots. So I like these boots. I've had them for about 4 years. They are my boot of choice when it's cold weather. Some modifications I've made to them. So I put a cutout piece of isomat underneath the laces here. It helps spread load the laces on my boot, and it also helps insulate the top of my shoe, or the top of my foot rather. And then the laces I have here, I just have a cord lock, and instead of having to tie my laces, I can just pull the top, push down, I'm good to go. I also have these on my hot weather ones because I think it's just an easier way to tie your boots, but it's definitely a good option instead of having to tie them. All right, guys, so that was just some considerations for cold weather. We did hit a few things. We did not hit everything. The main purpose of this shorter video was cold weather considerations when you're in like a 25 to 35 degree weather. That's a very short window, but we find ourselves in that weather a lot on the East Coast. So again, if you guys have any better ideas, please hit us up. We know there are a lot of Norwegians out there, Finnish out there that operate in this weather all the time, especially the Arctic. So if you guys have any input, please hit us up. We'll definitely get into winter camouflage later on in another video. But that's all we got for now. Please let us know if you have any other questions.